There's a story I saw about Michael Jordan on TikTok, and it was Kevin Garnett telling the story. He's another basketball player, and he talked about when he was a rookie, they were playing a game against the Chicago Bulls, and Jordan was just having an off night, and he and his friend were just killing it. And he said being a rookie, he was just kind of feeling it, and so he was kind of getting mouthy, just talking about, who is Jordan? And he said his teammates were like, man, chill. But he wasn't. He was doing it, and he said Michael just kind of looked at him and put his hands on his hip and was like, all right. And then proceeded to come out and smoke them. And he said toward the end of the game, he and his friend were sitting on the bench, and Jordan ran by. Was like, how you feeling now, rookie? How you doing?
After he just torched
him.
After
he just killed him. And he said he turned to his teammate and was like, man, I'm sorry. I didn't know. And he said from then on, he learned you don't trash talk Michael, no matter what you do. Why? Because he took it personal. And he used that personal thing to motivate himself to play better. And he would just kind of turn it on. And what I want to do with that is today on the show, we're talking about what you need to grow. And in order to grow, you've got to take it personal.
Yeah.
You've got to really internalize the desire to grow, what you want to do. If you don't internalize it, you really won't do it. So we're going to talk about how to do that on today's show.
This is the Thriving Man Podcast with David and Reese Maxwell. These weekly shows are designed to help you remove the confusion from your life and make real progress with your growth. No matter where you are or where you're going, we're here to help you live a life you can be proud of. So welcome to the Thriving Man Podcast.
Welcome to the Thriving Man Podcast. I'm Reese.
And I'm David.
And our goal is to help you get out of survival mode and into living a life that you're proud of. Today we're talking about taking it personal. I love the story with Michael Jordan. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
But there's another story about taking it personal that resonates with you especially.
It does.
Share that with us.
It does. In fact, when I was writing this down, I literally had to go watch the video on YouTube, and I started tearing up. Rocky movies get me. Rocky 2, one of my favorite scenes is Adrian had just had the baby. She wasn't doing good. They thought they might lose her. And so Rocky just quit training, was in the room, and she finally comes to, and he's like, hey, I don't have to fight Creed. That we can find another way. And she said, hey, I want you to do something for me. And he goes, what's that? And she says, come here. It's funny. It's getting me now thinking about it. And she says, I want you to win. And it was so amazing because then, of course, Mickey yells, what are we waiting for? The music starts. It's the montage of him working out.
Yeah.
And what it does is it really showcases he took it personal.
Yeah.
He was doing it for her. And I think there's a great illustration of us. We've got to do a similar thing in our life. I'm not saying you have to go fight Apollo Creed. Most of us would get killed by Apollo Creed.
Yep.
I mean,
For sure.
he's a fictional character, but we have to internalize our growth.
Yeah.
You've got to want to do it more than you want to stay where you are. Whenever you hear people tell stories of making changes in their life, a lot of times it comes down to that wake-up moment. And that wake-up moment is when they realize, I have to do something different. I mean, it's almost a common theme. Every person who turned their business around, lost a bunch of weight, changed some aspect of their life, they had a wake-up moment.
Yeah.
And what that wake-up moment does, it forces us or gets us to the place where we internalize our growth and our desire to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that term, a wake-up moment, because, I mean, that's really the first point of the podcast is changing the focus.
Yep.
A lot of times, as guys, we don't take things personal.
Yeah.
We usually blame it on outside stuff.
Yeah.
We get comfortable in the we, but we don't talk about me. We don't talk about what I'm doing. We just talk about the problems out there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh, well, my boss should have promoted me.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about our work ethic or how we handle our everyday business deals. We talk about how the boss just, I don't know, he just doesn't like me. We take this communal approach when it comes to our problems
Yeah.
to prevent us from having that. to not feel good about how we've been performing.
Yeah, and you hear that with people doing the man, the system, the this, the that, and there's always someone on the outside, or they reverse it and they're just like, well, those people need to change. Those people need to do this. Those people do that. So we're always focused somewhere else and not really looking at ourselves.
And that robs us of the wake up moment.
It does. That's a great point. It really does.
It robs us of that inflection point where we realize something needs to change, and we realize that God's given us free will to change it.
Yeah.
And then we start. Because that moment when the trajectory changes is so important. But if you never get to the me mentality of like, I have to be part of the transformation that I want to see in my life, then you're never going to get there.
Yeah.
You're always going to be you're going to be a victim of your circumstances.
Well, and you never get to the point where you personally say, what do I need to do? And by doing that, you start looking at what's important to me. What do I value? Maybe I'm valuing the wrong things. Maybe I'm wrong about my outlook in life. Maybe my thinking is wrong. And sometimes we don't do that because there's a humility factor in it. I've been wrong. And a lot of guys don't like that. We all know guys who they'll do anything but admit they were wrong.
Yeah.
When they were obviously wrong.
Yep.
And I think for a lot of us, we don't want to do that. But if we don't look at it and say, okay, am I wrong? Am I the jerk? Am I the one who's wrong? Then if you're not willing to do that, you're not willing to be honest and to really focus on maybe the change needs to start within me.
Yeah. Because when you get to that point that it becomes personal, then you get to the freedom to talk about what we did last week, where you begin to tailor things to your own life.
Yeah.
Because like maybe you realize, man, my health decisions have been trash for a decade. Something needs to change.
Yeah.
Well, when that happens and you begin to start taking steps, you can discover what's your version of being healthy. Because yes, there are universal principles to health, but like, let's say exercise. What version of exercise do you like?
Yeah.
Are you a person that would enjoy lifting? You can try it. You have the freedom to do that because you've taken it personal. Or maybe biking. Maybe you're an outdoors guy and you want to go running outside cross-country style. Okay. Or maybe you're a tennis person, or everyone loves pickleball now. Maybe you're a pickleball guy.
Yeah.
That's okay. You can begin to, when you take things personally, when you hit that inflection point, you can begin to custom tailor your life again. It stops being, well, this is all just happening to me.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I just don't have time to exercise.
Yeah.
And it can become, all right, I'm going to make time. What am I going to do? It gives you freedom, even though it hurts up front a little bit.
Yeah, and the danger today is we have a lot of ways to kind of excuse ourselves with all the information overload. We can learn a lot about things to where we become experts, but we don't do them. It's like the person who isn't making good nutrition decisions is very overweight, but can tell you about every diet that's out there. And a lot of times they learn all about it to tell you why, that didn't work for me. I tried that, it didn't work for me. I tried that, it didn't work for me. And they become experts, but they're not really doing anything in it. They just know about it. And I'm afraid our society is becoming one where we know a lot about stuff, but we're not really doing anything because we're not really taking it personally.
Yeah, and that's really the big second point of this for taking it personal. Your knowledge is useless unless you apply it.
Yeah.
We mentioned that last week, but the truth is, like, it's very easy to get access to good information. It's still just as difficult as it ever was to apply it. I mean, you can learn about proper running technique in like 5 minutes. You can look up a YouTube video and do it. Running is just as hard as it was decades ago. You have to apply it. And because that's where the transformation really changes.
Yeah, and it's like, for me, I enjoy cooking. I love cooking, and so on TikTok, I have a folder of like recipes, cooking things. I've got over 100 videos in there.
Golly.
And I enjoy them. But how many times have I gone back to really implement any of those?
Yeah.
Not many. In fact, I think there's only a couple One I just did recently. There's a guy, he's a chef I love who screams at the camera, but he has really good recipes. And one was for butter chicken. And I thought, I'm going to try this. There's even a thing where he puts in like half a pound of butter and he does the voice of someone off camera. That's a lot of butter. And he goes, it's butter chicken. And so I love his videos. But I tried his butter chicken. It was phenomenal. But it took time. I had to get the ingredients. I had to cook it. I had to do it. It was worth it. Why? Because I implemented what I had.
Yeah.
I already had the information. I just didn't do anything with it. But when I finally did, I enjoyed it. I didn't regret it. And I think for us, we have to be careful that we're not just consuming, we're actually doing. And sometimes that means turning the consuming side off to say, okay, I'm not doing anymore.
Yep.
Until I apply what I'm learning.
Yep.
I'm not going to buy any more books till I read the books I have.
Yep.
You know, because some people, we get really good at collecting things, but we're not really doing anything about it. And so that's what we want to understand. If we have stuff that we're not using, we're not really doing anything. We're just feeling better about ourselves.
Exactly. I love you said we have to make sure we don't become collectors of ideas without doing the ideas. Yeah. And that's really something that we have to be cautious of because it takes so much less time to collect ideas than it does to apply them.
That's a great point.
When you cooked that butter chicken,
yeah,
you could have found at least 20 more recipes, maybe up to 50 more recipes in the time it took for you to make one.
Yeah.
And there's just a very big proportion between understanding what to do and actually applying it to our lives. And yeah, that can be frustrating, but we need that. And that's why at Thriving Man, one of our big things is a seasonal plan for growth.
Yeah.
There are seasons of learning. There are seasons of putting it into practice and improving. There are seasons of improving the quality of your life. And then there are seasons of adding new things and integrating new things into your life. There's all kinds of different seasons in a normal year even.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we need to learn from that so we don't just get stuck in one zone 24/7 for the rest of our lives. Because guys do that. We'll either just collect information and that's it, or we'll just work and we don't ever think if there's a better way.
Yeah, and a lot of times guys fall into that because, you know, you get all these messages, well, you got to grind, you got to grind, you got to grind. And there is a time you have to grind. We all have to do that in life in different areas. But there's also a time to rest or you'll destroy yourself. You won't be able to make it. And that's why there's natural seasons in the year. And I think we have to apply that to our lives. We have to understand, okay, this is a season where I need to do some implementing of ideas. I need to quit learning new stuff. I need to implement. For me, it's kind of like the person who has the big library and they want to show you, oh, I've got all these books. I've got all these books. Nothing wrong with having books. Books are great. Are you reading any of them? Have you read them? And I'm not saying you have to read every book you own, but what's the point of having a bunch of books if you're not going to read any of them?
Yep.
You know, you're just getting them to show off to people. Hey, look at my books. How many have you read? None. But I watch a lot of videos. Okay, what's the point of having them? And I think for a lot of us, we have lives where we're collecting a lot, but we're not really doing a lot. We know a lot about stuff. It's kind of like the Monday morning quarterback. We're getting into football season and people, oh, if I was the coach, I would do this, that, and the other. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? But none of them are actual coaches. They're not coaching the NFL. They're not coaching college. It's a very small group that does it. Why? Because it's very hard to do. But it's real easy to sit on the outside and tell someone else what to do.
Exactly. Another big benefit that I don't think we think about a lot when it comes to taking things personally, when you start the journey of growth, you've hit that point where you're like, okay, it starts with me. I'm going to start doing X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And you begin.
Yeah.
It, in its own way, relieves some of the pressure of comparison and some of the pressure of trying to do it all at once.
Yeah.
When you are actually making progress, it helps immensely.
Yeah.
It's when we have nowhere to go, nothing to do, and no kind of plan that we really start to become victims to those things. Because it's the old saying, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. If you don't have a direction to grow, you're just going to do whatever anybody else says.
Yeah.
And so that comparison, the social media, the TV or whatever, that'll end up driving you unless you have something like, no, yeah, that looks cool on TV. I really like that guy's house, and I'd love to put that in my house one day. But my focus right now is XYZ.
Yeah.
That becomes its own benefit because it's like a boundary for you to say, this is my space of what I'm doing. And anything outside of that space, we'll deal with that later.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Well, and it's very stress relieving, I think, for us, because sometimes I think we feel this pressure. We have to do everything. We have to be everything. That's the danger of our society getting so connected, is you're feeling pressure from all over the world. You know, well, here's a guy in Asia who builds these huts with his hands, you know, and you're like, I can't even make a sandwich, you know, and so, okay, well, he's over there, you're here. What can you do here? But when you're doing something, the neat thing about it is you kind of have that inner security, that inner confidence of, I am doing something. I'm not doing what he's doing, but I'm doing what I need to be doing.
Exactly.
And I think that helps you kind of tune out all the pressure and all the other stuff, all the sales gimmicks. You know, everyone's wanting to sell you this, sell you that. But when you're focused and going, well, I'm working on this right now, that kind of helps you go, I don't need that. I don't need this. I don't need that. I'm looking for things that deal with this.
Exactly.
And that doesn't mean you don't have different seasons where you're trying something new. But you're saying right now, this is what I'm doing. It's kind of like, you know, horses in horse racing have the blinders on. And what that does, that keeps them from being distracted. We can get easily distracted in society today.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I mean, there's so much to do. And the dangers as men is we're always starting and never finishing, or we're always learning and never applying. And what we want to do is, as we talked about last week, we want to get our values, we want to figure out what's important, but then we want to start working on our growth.
Yeah.
Because when you're working on you, it's easier for you to tune out all the pressure to be something or someone other than what you are.
Yeah. Man, that's such a good illustration. And I'll be the first person to say that helps me. Because as a guy, I naturally have the drive to grow.
Yeah.
It's just part of how God wired me.
Yeah.
I'm not struggling.
Yeah.
I'm not like, man, I need to work up the motivation to do something. My problem is holding back.
Yeah.
Because I'll burn myself out.
Yeah.
You know, I'll just be like, well, let's grow in this and this. You know what? I'm setting 37 goals for the next 7 days.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm that guy. And so for me, whenever I pick something, or I'm like, hey, I've got a max of 2 things I'm doing, or hey, I'm just doing maintenance mode in these areas, but I want to improve these areas. That helps me because even those maintenance mode things I'm working, I'm going to have a tendency to hear something cool and be like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to admit, I'll start the first leg of 75 different races and not complete any of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not where true transformation happens. Transformation happens over time. And starting is a lot more fun than sticking with it.
Well, and that's the whole point. Sustainable growth is one of those things you have to really decide, I'm in it for the long term. The good thing about it is when you're in it for the long term, one, you grow incrementally, which gives you the ability to handle more.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like we see companies all the time. They'll blow up and they'll get huge out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden they implode or they explode or whatever. And what we want to do is we want to grow the right way so that, you know, 5 years from now, we are a different person in many ways, but you can handle it. You can grow. Just like people who are lottery winners, they've never had money. All of a sudden they have $200 million.
Right.
It messes them up because they've never learned how to budget $20,000. And so they got a lot and they think, oh, this is going to fix everything. Not if they don't apply it right.
Yep.
And I think for us, we have to understand that growth is something that's long-term. Yes, we all want to see amazing things happen short-term, but most of it would destroy us. It would mess us up. And that's why when you take a seasonal approach, that growth is sustainable, it's more long-term, and you're more likely to be successful long-term.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going back to that illustration of the blinders. That's so good because you can just get caught in this circle of starting and never make progress past that. And so we don't want you guys to get caught in that. I mean, I've been caught in that before, and it's very nice to be able to have a tool, really. Because what happens is when you hit this point that it becomes personal, once you start making a plan that's customized to you, that becomes its own almost defense mechanism against the tendency for wanting to start new things all the time. Or the temptation to quit.
Yeah, and that's what it does. It helps us focus, and it helps us have a place to put our energy. We're not wasting energy on all these other things. We're focusing it on the one thing, and I think we'll see more growth in that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's move a little bit to our challenge portion.
Yeah.
Our big challenge to you guys is this. Pick an application for something you already know you want or need to do and start. Let's not get perfectionist about it. I mean, for example, if you need to clean up your nutrition, go to the grocery store and meal prep for your breakfasts or for your lunches. Buy a bunch of rotisserie chickens and rice and frozen vegetables and just make it and do it. Make it easy for yourself. Let's begin to put into practice the things that we've been planning before.
Yeah.
If you're like me, just a tip that I'll give you guys that I've learned from my own life. And there's this tendency to run across things that you want to apply. New things. I have found for myself, it helps to make a list of things I would like to do one day and set that off to the side to go back to.
Yeah.
And that allows me to say, hey, I'm focusing on these one or two things. My list for all the things I want to do is over here. So you can go to it. Because I think a lot of times there's that fear of like, if I don't do it now, I'm going to forget.
Yeah.
But just having a list, whether that's on your notes, for me, I use Notion, but having a place, and every time you're listening to a podcast or you're reading a book and you're like, I want to do that, just go add it to the list.
Yeah.
You can place it in a spot that you know you'll go back to. And then every season that you want to grow and add something new, that's where you can go to look. And instead of trying to start from scratch every single time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We want you to actually start somewhere, but we want you to focus your energy in that one area. You know, maybe it is nutrition. Maybe for you, it's getting more sleep or doing things to make your sleep better. Those are a couple physical things. Maybe it's just reading more. Maybe it's picking one book and actually finishing it. Maybe it's deciding, okay, I'm going to put the book in the bathroom. So instead of sitting on my phone and scrolling for 20 minutes on TikTok, I'm actually reading a book. Just that little thing, you'll be amazed at what you can do. And so there's lots of little things, but just pick one, and for the next 7 days, just focus on that.
Exactly.
And see what can happen if you, for 7 days, focus on one thing to work on, to grow in.
Yeah. So let's start making it personal. Let's start shifting from just plans to action. We talked last week about good inputs. Well, this week we're talking about making those inputs a reality. That takes time. That takes effort. It's not super glamorous, but it is worth it. And we believe you can do it. That's why we make what we make. That's why we do Thriving Man. And we will see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Thriving Man podcast. If you want to check out more resources from David and Reese, you can go to thrivingman.com. We'll see you in the next episode.